anyways. I'll save it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to we don't have a name for this, do we?
Not at the time of recording this.
I was thinking LPs with D&D.
Oh, that's what it was.
That's what we said?
I remember you floated D&D to me, and I liked it.
When we start putting this up, everyone's going to be like, these things are going to come out back to back, and they're not going to realize how long of a gap there's been between these two episodes, except for the fact both of our shooting spaces seem to have changed dramatically, yes. So that could also signal the passage of time.
I have an extension here, so I can be in another room now.
Okay, well, I got kicked to the basement because my son took over my old office, so I'm now in the basement, and I feel like a record troll. I feel like a little hobbit in his hobbit cave. I remember I went to, do you know the band Hardskin?
No.
Hardskin's like this, kind of like the Weird Al Yankovic of Oi. Which they make fun of me all the time, so I feel like I can get back at them, kind of. But they're beloved by Oi fans, but they're also make fun of Oi pretty mercilessly. And we did a split with them and all this stuff. But I went over to the singer Sean, or Fat Bob is his name in the band, but Sean Forbes' house, and who's also been the buyer for Rough Trade since the '80s and stuff, right? Like a notoriously amazing record collector, and his house. It was it was built out of records, his apartment. His bed was on crates of records. There was records behind the bed. You had to pull the bed out, which was full of crates of records, to get to records that were behind it. There were records in every nook and cranny of this house. And I always wanted that. And I feel like I'm close to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want that. I've actually sold, during lockdown, almost 100 records.
Well, I told the story, I think. I sold, I think it was 300 records, and I took all the money and I bought one with all that money.
You told me that. That is a crazy way to
be irresponsible.
Be into records, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. That was when I was fucked up, was living a little higher on the hog then, so I felt a little more comfortable in making such a kind of brazen financial decision. Hopefully that record keeps appreciating, because I think I could sell it for more now. But yeah, I don't know if you know this, but collectibles are very hot. That's the big talk in the business world these days.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I've heard so many different stories about collecting records these days, but I don't listen to those stories. I just buy records because I think if it's cool. And my idea of what's cool, as this show will show, is definitely off the mark.
I have a record today that you're going to think is way cooler than I think it is.
Okay. Oh, I love that.
I think this is going to be one that you're going to be like, that's awesome, and I can't wait to discuss this with you. I'm very excited about it. I switched up for everyone watching, I switched up my pick at the 11th hour. Danko luckily was kind enough to let me do this, but I had another record here, and it was going to be a much more serious conversation, but I'm going to put this back in the box beside me and save that for another episode. And I've got my other one right here.
Since we're three episodes in, this is our third episode, and the first two episodes was I brought in a acting record and a How to Train Your Dogs record. Don't feel like you have to bring in a goofy record too. It's just what I'm into.
Oh, this shit is goofy. That's what I mean. I just realized I didn't have my proper microphone on, so I apologize to everyone if I sounded like shit. Okay, I hopefully sound a little bit better now. But no, this is goofy. I got some goofy shit. That's the thing. Who wants to? Oh, we're gonna flip that record, right? We got to flip a 45.
We got to do flip.
You know what? This is gonna be sacrilegious, but I don't have that. I guess I could flip a record. I'm right beside my Japanese Australian records. Those are. No, I got a crappy weird Christian Christmas record I can flip. That's for sure. All right, this right here was a Oral Roberts Christmas record that comes in the Oral Roberts mailer still.
Wait a minute. Is this your pick? This would be a
No,
great.
this is not my pick.
That would be a record I would try and find.
I got this at the pawn shop, not the pawn shop, sorry, the collectibles store down the street from me, which is why I know collectibles are so hot right now because I follow them on Instagram, and they keep posting about these sporting cards. You can tell I like sports that go for millions of dollars, Danko, like millions of dollars for like a card that came out like a Mike Trout card that came out like 8 years ago now. I don't even know. Like, I don't know. Maybe it came out 4 years ago. Who knows? Anyway, do you call we'll call this the A side and we'll call this weird side the B side. Do you call A side or B side?
I'll call B side.
Okay, B side. Okay, let's go. B side it is. We got B side coming up.
I don't know if I won anything. What does that mean? I go first?
Yeah, and I'll give you this Oral Roberts record next time I see you. Remind me, because I can get rid of this one. I can definitely let that one go.
For sure. I will take it. So is it my turn? I go first?
Yeah, you go first. Or you go first.
Do you mind if I have a snack before I talk about my record?
You can totally have a snack before you talk about your record.
The only reason why I ask is because my pick for this episode is the Chiquita Banana.
What?
The Chiquita. Wait a minute. There it is. The Chiquita Banana album, which was put out by Chiquita Banana in 1984. It's a Dutch release, which is odd because Chiquita Banana at the time was an American company. I think now it's a Brazilian-owned company.
Oh, that's good.
Kind of good, I guess, right? Like, I mean, considering everything. And it's a gatefold. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. There. Weird. Is it like, are they characters? Is it like anthropomorphic bananas?
I guess that is... I guess that's Chiquita herself, the Chiquita.
Yeah, does she sing on it?
No, so this is a compilation of banana-themed songs.
Whoa.
Like El Bananero, Juanita Banana, Yes We Have No Bananas is a song.
Yep.
Let's see, A Bunch of Bananas, Jamaican Rumba. A lot of these songs, actually, I realized are very familiar to most people. Big band numbers, and you just know them. They just always play in the background. You don't know the name of them or who did them, but you just know the song. And this is a compilation of that.
Is banana the most popular fruit to write songs about? I'm trying to think.
I'm not... Apples would be up there, right? And strawberries.
I don't know. Strawberries, I guess. Apples, I can't think of too many. Raspberry beret, which I guess kind of counts.
I'm thinking apples. I can't think of an apple song.
I can't think of an apple song.
There's got to be an apple song out there. But bananas, I mean, here's a little tidbit I have. This is a track off the record. Everybody knows that song, but you don't know the name of it. So that's basically the whole album is kind of like that, including they do a cover of ABBA's Chiquitita.
Oh, is that about bananas?
I don't think it's about bananas. It just sounds like Chiquita.
It does. What year did that come out?
1984 on CBS Records.
What was like, because there is, obviously there is a lot of issues with fruit companies operating in the Southern Hemisphere, all over the world, but certainly in South America at that time. Is Chiquita Banana, they're one of the ones, right?
They're one of the ones. There's so much controversy about them, from, using pesticides that affect workers to funding terrorist groups to all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. Like, I mean, I bought this not knowing that.
Well, I don't think the Chiquita Banana Corporation was receiving any of your money
and this is a dole. So I'm in the clear. But yeah, I didn't realize. I just I saw it at where did I buy this? I bought this a few years back at Good Music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, when I saw that, I had to get it. I had to buy it. So
It's
it's been
no, I was going to say it makes it way more sinister knowing that when you hear it like that.
so evil now.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's a compilation of like, but these weren't songs commissioned by
yeah.
Chiquita. These are they just culled them all from various parts. But it is a weird Chiquita. It's American. It was American owned at the time of the record coming out. It is a little odd. I mean, putting it in a 2020 frame, but I like to not do that and just enjoy it and laugh at it for what it is.
Yeah. I think
So
that's also the great thing about used records, unlike streaming services, where streaming services, you're still putting money into the pocket of the person that you might not like, but you still enjoy a song by, or are at least intrigued to check out a song by. You're ultimately putting a little bit of money in their pocket. With a used record, they're not seeing any of that. Like, the
right,
Chiquita Banana Corporation will not see a dime of that sale of that
no,
record, which is gives you a little bit of like, I don't know. I say this with a lot of privilege and I acknowledge that, but I think at the same time it does give you a little bit of distance from the evil that these records might have, originally contained.
it was the villain who bought this originally.
Yes.
That's who.
Yeah. What a dick.
So yeah, so that's my record. I mean, I don't have a lot too much to say about it. I mean, let's see who's on here. Al Hurt, I mean, of note. But a lot of artists I'm not really familiar with because it's of another kind of genre of music that I'm unfamiliar with. Like maybe people know Mariachi Mexico de Pepe Villa, but I
No.
don't.
Maybe that's
So
like
I
a
mean,
huge name in the mariachi world.
yeah, probably right.
Yeah.
I mean, I must. It's like they're the Rolling Stones of
Mariachi music.
mariachi. So there's a lot of that, but there's Al Hurt is there. Percy Faith has a couple of tracks, and then like I mentioned, the ABBA cover that Caravelli does a cover of the ABBA song Chiquitita, um, and, which is it's just odd that it's like a Spanish title but in English lyrics, but this is an instrumental on a Chiquita Banana album of a song written by Swedes. So I don't know.
ABBA had no problem cashing that check, or the publishing
No,
company that owns ABBA's catalog, at least at that point, didn't. But
exactly.
yeah.
Like I believe it would be them. They're probably pretty shrewd with their business dealings.
Do you remember Spy Magazine from the mid '90s?
Yes, yes.
My friend gave me a Spy Magazine book. That's incredible. Like
Wow.
he worked for one of the former editors of Spy Magazine at Vanity Fair and was gifted like 2 copies of this book, and he gave me one. Like, sweetest gift ever. Thank you, John Ortfed, so much for that gift. Anyway, I was flipping through it the other day because in celebration of what's happened politically in the last few days with the seemingly, hopefully, knock on wood, fall of a tyrant. But they did a thing about the cheapest zillionaires in the world, I think they called the article. And they sent checks for like 25 cents, blah, 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 to all these different millionaires, zillionaires. And one of the only people that cashed it, Donald Trump, 18 cents.
Wow.
So that goes to show you that is how much, maybe ABBA did know then they were getting this check from Chiquita Banana. Because, if people are in that position or cashing checks for 18 cents, maybe ABBA
Yeah.
was that on top of their business dealings. Not to say they're the same as Donald Trump, obviously.
No, they're definitely not in the same ballpark,
At all.
but sticklers to cash for sure.
They turned down $1 billion to reform, according to
A
legend.
billion? I know they turned down a lot of money.
I heard it was $1 billion, and it was going to be like,
Oh wow.
it was like that would be like the entire tour gross or something, which seems, now that I'm saying it out loud, really really high. But I could see them playing like, like thousands of people in every single city.
Stadium.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
giant stadiums. Like they would have to do like when the Pope came to Toronto type shit. Like You know, when that Rolling Stones did that SARS stock, you know, that field, they could, and
Yeah.
just by themselves, like no opener, you know.
No, no. How could you even open for ABBA?
I would hope
I
Anti-Semix. I would hope that Mob 47 or Anti-Semix, you know, like they really got, you know, they like, you know, we want to rep our country, and what's the next greatest export from our country after ABBA? It's the D beat hardcore.
right, right, right. I mean, we've had a couple of the closest brush to ABBA that we've gotten, or I've gotten when we've been in Sweden is, well, number one, we recorded at their old studios, Polar Studios in Stockholm. We recorded, or we mixed an album there, and I stayed at their hotel. They have a hotel called Revolve
Whoa.
in Stockholm, and that's my favorite hotel.
You had a very different experience than I did in Sweden. We were scared to smoke weed because we heard that the venue was going to call the cops on us if we did.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a pretty hard line uh, stance on weed in Sweden.
Yeah.
Although maybe things all over worldwide are starting to lessen, but from what I gathered, yeah, there's a strong. Although it's coming around, I think.
One guy told me one time when I asked him if I could get weed, he was a guy that was working at a fucking festival in Gothenburg. And I was like, hey man, do you know anyone's got cannabis or anywhere I can get some cannabis? He goes, do I look like someone that would hang out with bikers and prostitutes? I was like, what? No, but you'd be a
Well,
lot cooler if you did.
well, I think things are getting a little chilled out now, um, and I think that's just because everywhere, you know, people are becoming a little more relaxed around weed. I think.
People
Hopefully,
realize that the green generates another type of green. So I think that's also led to a lot
there's
of it
also
too.
that. Yeah,
This is
yeah.
this sounds like another podcast that I do. So I really have really brought you
Yes.
down a path. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, and then I have another third thing. I've been to the ABBA Museum.
Oh, really?
So yeah, that's also in Stockholm. So there's three little ABBA things that I can say. I've never met any of them, although a friend of mine did. He met one of the women, or he not just met, but hung out with at her studio or something. It was kind of crazy.
Wow.
But they're not in seclusion, but they're hard to find.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
like they
they
got so much money. When I
stay
heard
out of the public eye.
when I heard the band Dead Can Dance lived in a castle, I realized that there's like a level of artists where you just have so much money, you know?
Dead Can Dance.
Yeah, you know that they were like '80s kind of goth band.
Yeah, but did they? I was never a fan, so did they really generate that much money?
Maybe it's not Dead Can Dance. Let me look it up real quick. It was some band on Beggars, Banquet Records. When we were on that label, we were talking. They were like, "Yeah, they live in a castle because they made so much money." What's the band that does like "You Spin Me Right Round, Baby, Right
Oh,
Round"?
um, Dead or Alive.
Dead or Alive. That's who I meant. That's who I meant. Sorry, not Dead Can Dance. Apologies to
But they
Dead
had
Can
just had
Dance.
that one song.
Yeah, but
Dead Can Dance. I was like, what did we miss out on? Dead Can Dance. Live in a castle. What did we do wrong?
yeah, this they live in a fucking castle apparently.
I mean,
Maybe it's
Dead
like
or
a cheap
Alive like
castle.
had that one song.
Yeah, and that song is huge,
Yeah,
right? Like, and that's the time when you like, when you would sell like 3 million copies of a 12 inch, you
yeah,
know,
that's true.
and that also
I
probably
think
got
he
synced.
died. He
Really?
died though. Singer. Yeah, I
So,
could be wrong, but I think he's dead.
so you're telling me there's probably a castle for sale right now? Rest in
An
peace,
empty
though. I don't know.
castle,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
maybe just like, the keyboardist lives there now.
Yeah, he's just like, well, I guess I got the run of the place. Like, Jesus, let's run around this thing. Let's see what's up. So, I also heard an amazing story when I was in Australia. We had this guy drive us one day who used to roadie for AC/DC and for Rose Tattoo, and he was super tight with them. And he told us a story where, because he was like really good friends with like the drummer of AC/DC who passed away. Like some,
Oh, what's his name? Is it Mark Evans?
I don't know. Like apparently he was like a complete psycho, like just like a wild man. And he told a story where they like got up, they were playing like two shows at like some giant stadium in Melbourne, got up that day and was like, I want to buy a Ferrari. And so they went out and he just like bought a Ferrari at a car show, like bought this like car. And then they're driving. And at first they were like not going to sell it to him because they didn't think he had enough money. And then so he called the credit card company, and the credit card company's like, yeah, that's a gold credit card. Like back in the day when no one knew what a fucking gold credit card was. It's like, give him whatever he wants. He's got whatever he wants. So they're driving this Ferrari back, and then they pass a boat show. And they drive by this boat show, and he's like, oh. So they buy a boat, and they just dock this boat so they have a place to do drugs in the water, like in international waters.
This is just the drummer from AC/DC?
Yeah, that's how much money this guy was getting. He was getting shit, too, of the publishing, right?
Jesus. Just makes you think how much, like, Angus and Malcolm.
They got castles, dude. They got castles.
That's insane.
The record I'm going to talk about, the guy he probably lives in a fucking castle somewhere. He's got a castle.
Oh, so this is like a known guy.
Oh, yeah. It's a known commodity. I would describe him as someone that you are a big fan of, even.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
All right. The record I'm going to talk about is someone I'm not really as much of a fan of, but this is the Howard Stern, How Weird Stern, Weird Al Yankovic ripoff record that he did back in the way. 50 Ways to Rank Your Mother, which is, of course, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Yep. And this is a real interesting artifact. This is like early on into the career, like
classic.
He hadn't really found himself in any sort of great way, and it's also, I love it because it comes with a giant poster.
And you have the poster
of Howard Stern. There.
So amazing. That is very. I love that choice. That's great. That's very hard to find with a poster.
I didn't like. I had never really heard about this record. I was in Rick's Collectibles. Rest in peace, Rick's Collectibles, an amazing record store at Main and Girard. And they always. Did you ever go to Rick's?
I think I went there once.
They always had, if Rick wasn't working, it was a real crapshoot of who you're going to find behind the counter. Like sometimes it would be a kid. Sometimes it would be like some adult that was very bizarre. Sometimes it would be another adult that was very bizarre. Sometimes it would be a slightly more together adult that was equally bizarre, but in a different way. It was always very interesting people back there. And so I was in there one day, and I would just spend hours there because they had so many records, and we dig. And I remember one time going to the basement, you had to climb down a rope to get there because the stairs had collapsed at one point. It was like, it's such a holdover from a different time, like a pre-Discogs era.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like, for me, it would have been Vinyl Museum.
Yep, definitely.
Peter Dunn's Vinyl Museum.
I just framed a Peter Dunn's Vinyl Museum record bag to put on my wall.
Oh, and that was, I really hated the record bags.
I hate them too.
But now that Vinyl Museum is no more, I actually, when I see it, when I pull a record out and I see that I bought it at Vinyl Museum, I go, oh, wow, that's so cool. With the Christian stamp proverb. It's terrible, but now it's great.
That was the thing, like, people don't realize, and, obviously the world's a better place now in a lot of ways because of this stuff, but, people talk about gatekeeping, and gatekeeping wasn't like a dude on the internet being a dick to you because you liked a band. Gatekeeping was like having to go to places that sometimes were not good for your physical health, dealing with people that were definitely not good for your mental health. Like as a kid, and this isn't just record stores. Like stories about like one of the original comic book stores in Toronto sounds like it was a nightmare for kids that went in there having to deal with this guy that was very abusive. And it was like no joke what you had to get with it. And like Vinyl Museum was at least a passive weirdness where it was just like you bought these records and you're like, why is there this weird bag with this proverb on it? But, I definitely saw some weird shit at Rick's Collectibles over the years.
That I have to assume fetches a pretty penny. I've got that on MP3, but I don't have it in vinyl form.
I bought this actually
So
because this guy came in, one of the people that worked there. I wish I could remember his name because I'd give him a shout out. And he was like, just bought this at a swap meet in Etobicoke. And he was like, he bought, I forget how much he paid for it, like nothing. And I'm like, oh shit, I'll give you $40 for that. And he was like, oh really? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay. And so I just bought him off the dude as he was coming into the store, type
wow.
thing. There's one song on it. That's why I love this record. That is actually kind of like a punk song, and it's kind of got like a punk rock feel. Like the rest of it's kind of just like Weird Al ripoff stuff, you know. And it's
Yeah, yeah.
kind of crude, and it certainly isn't like where he's at now. Like I think it's fascinating to look at it as like a cultural artifact because he is now he's like kind of like it's him, Joe Rogan, Oprah, and Mark Maron, right? Like that would be like the big three of people that are doing the game that we're in. The big four,
Yeah,
I guess.
like
Sorry,
the talking game.
the talking game. You know, like not like obviously there's people that do really well, but some are not worth talking about. So those ones are probably like the more mainstream of the people that are doing really well in this thing.
Well, I think he's cleaned up his persona over the last 10, 15 years. Um, and I think he's become recognized for how great of an interviewer he is. He really is a great interviewer. I think it frustrated him a lot because he went down that hole that record represents, and he couldn't get out of it for a while. And slowly he was able to dig himself into respectability. I think people really recognize how great a contribution he made to pop culture. I mean, some of that's like, I don't know about you, but when he came into the airwaves in Toronto, that's when I really started to listen to him. And man, I couldn't believe how great it was. It was politically incorrect, but there were so many things they did, like, take the piss out of celebrities and stuff like that, and have the Ramones on arguing with each other. I mean, that stuff is gold, you know.
Yeah, I had a real different take on it. I think because like you had already kind of been through community radio and come out on the other side of it, and that was really during the height of my like love affair with community radio.
Right.
And so to me, it felt like very crass, obviously, which I know is why people did like it at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and I do remember when the TV show came on, which was a couple years later. I think they started showing the TV show here. And I'd watch the TV show and just be like, slack jawed at what I was seeing. But that was like at a time where you had, Tom Green on community radio, on TV or here, and you had like a lot of like shocking stuff. Springer.
Shock jocks. Yeah.
Yeah, Springer. And it was like a real low point for, not that we're not at another low point, but like it was definitely a low point for mainstream culture at that point. So I kind of didn't get into Howard Stern, and I would still describe myself as not that as into it. I'm more obsessed with it as a cultural thing than I am to listen to it. Also, like legit, like beef for life with the way he treated Dale Crover in that interview, where he was just so disrespectful, so disrespectful to the legend. And I get it why, but at the same time, it's like, dude,
it's kind of like, yeah, with Howard Stern and Joe Rogan, both of them, you don't go to them for music and
no
any music knowledge or anything, no matter what they say.
I hear Rogan has a secret punk connection. That's what I've heard rumblings
Okay, that's a treasure map. You're gonna have to figure that out. From what I've heard, he likes Leonard Skinner.
Yeah. Have you watched that Lydia Lunch video?
Yeah, I saw that a few years back, even before his podcast took off.
Yeah, I
think they both look bad in it.
Oh, they look terrible. They both look terrible in it. It really.
Yeah.
He looks worse in the end, obviously, because it's just like one of those things where you're like watching it happen. You're like, oh, this is fucking awkward, and then it just gets like kind of abusive towards the end. He also, and I was a huge news radio fan. I even liked some of that UFC stuff.
I love that show.
But yeah, like, who would have thought that his character on news radio was him? like this like weirdo conspiracy obsessed like like weird like office weirdo type.
Well, then I mean, you could say Andy Dick wasn't too far off either, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's why that show's so brilliant. They just went through and they were like, "Hey, what are you actually like?" Like they're writing like, "Oh, this is fucking gold." Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know. I'm sure like Phil Hartman had shades of himself in there too.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh,
Yeah.
that show is, yeah, that show is awesome.
Oh, it's one of the best shows ever. One of the
Ev-
whew. If
He,
I was ever on that show, like his show, 100%, I would just power smoke weed. I'd be like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Every time I'm talking, you're smoking. Every time you're talking, I'm smoking. Let's just do 1,000 dabs. Just like power dab with him and just hit him with news radio questions. Like every time he asks a question, be like, boom, okay, season 2, like, hit him with the news radio stuff.
right. Yeah, I don't really listen to the podcast too much. Over the last few years, I'm just going to reserve my opinion on it. But it is what it is. Sometimes I'll check in if David Lee Roth is on, or Paul Stanley or something. But that's about it. There is like, what got me initially to listen to him were mainly the comedians he'd bring on, and those were just funny discussions, and that was about it. And with Marin, what initially got me to listen to it was how he was just initial episodes were him apologizing to him mistreating comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing.
It's amazing how all these people we're talking about, I would not want to hear music advice from any of them.
No.
Like it's not a music podcast.
And Mark Maron plays his guitar. I mean, he's actually a pretty good guitar player. He uses it as intros and outros on the show. But I don't know.
I saw him snatch a guitar out of me. We were backstage. Oh, we'll save that one for another day. But I saw him. Anyway, we'll save that for another day. Yeah, like that's the thing. I like your podcast and I like pro wrestling podcasts, and that's what I tend to listen to. And of course the best show, calls with John Worster and stuff like that. But I do have, like, as I say, appreciation for this record on like a cultural level, and also that one punk kind of sounding song on there. But as in terms of like impact that as he has had, it's amazing when you look at something like this. It's inspiring that, like, here's this dude, just like a regional radio guy, ripping off Weird Al, and years later, he's banning my favorite radio caller on those wrestling podcasts, Hansi, from his famous radio show.
Well,
I dropped Hansi on you there. I slipped that in there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Hansi was a guest on our podcast a long time ago. I don't know what happened to Hansi.
I hear Hansi every week. Every week he's on. He calls in all the wrestling podcasts.
I see.
That's how I know him. Yeah, I met him. He came up to me at an event, and so he's like, "Yeah, blah, I'm Hansi," and I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah, for the wrestling thing." He's like, "Blah, blah," and he's like, "Yeah, you were the first guy that knew the Howard Stern thing," and I'm like, "What Howard Stern thing?" He's like, "Oh, that I used to call Howard Stern," and I'm like, "Dude, I've never heard Howard Stern in my life, so I do not know. I do not know what you're talking about on this one." And then I found out the whole story later on, but we don't have to get into that. That has been litigated on the Howard Stern show and on message boards many times over at this point.
I was fascinated just listening to Howard Stern and hearing there's a guy, I think he lived in Mississauga.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a guy from Mississauga talking to Howard Stern like every other day.
He's legitimately famous because of that. Like my friend, shout out to Nick Woj from Coal World. When Coal World played here, they tried to get him to come to the show. Like they were like reaching out to try and get him to like come to the show. They're like, "We got to meet you." My manager, when I told my manager I met him, he's like, "Oh wow, that's wild." Like, and you've had him on the podcast. He's well known, and it's so separate, the wrestling world from the Howard Stern world. But the Howard Stern world is massive. Like Fred Armisen said, being on that show was one of the highlights of his like career.
Oh, really? One of his personal highlights.
His episode's really interesting because he loves it so much, and it's just like him fanning out.
Well, I mean, we went into the studio. We were given a tour of the studio when we went there, when we were doing some sort of press tour, and we got to walk through the studio. They had already left an hour before, but we saw Baba Booey outside, and then another time I was at Sirius, and Howard walked by, and we were on the air actually doing an interview, and I kind of started waving my hands at him, and he kind of did his papal wave at me. It was kind of cool, but that was, and then when he was gone, we were still on the air, and I started talking about Howard Stern. So that's my New York Howard Stern sighting. So it was ABBA. I gave you my ABBA brushes with ABBA fame, and now Howard Stern.
Yeah, there we go. I have not breathed the same air as Howard Stern ever.
Neither have I. We were in the studio. The window was there. So.
I did breathe the same air as Beyonce one time.
Whoa.
Yeah, we were doing a BBC session, and we were in the big studio because she wanted to record in that smaller studio, the John Peel studio, and so we shared a common room, and she walked through the common room and waved hello to us, and yeah, like that's like one of the few people I've seen in real life where you're like, like celebrities don't have an aura like when you see them in real life, but then there's some that do, and she definitely did. Superstar.
Right. Auras, yeah, that's hard to say. Because, I mean, you're just projecting what...
No, she had a legitimate aura. Like, I think it would have picked up on a photograph even.
I think Lemmy, to me, was someone... Yeah. To me, I think he was like... In my mind's eye, I think he's like 7 feet tall whenever I'd see him. But he was tall. But I don't know. I haven't really met anyone who had that aura, but Lemmy would probably be the one.
I never met Lemmy. I would love to have met him. Rest in peace. But yeah, like I could see that. I could definitely see him having it. I'm trying to think of like other people I met where I was like, damn, like you got like a thing going on.
Yeah.
No, really, Beyonce. Beyonce, more than just about anyone.
Beyonce would definitely.
Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp had it.
Really?
Yeah.
Johnny Depp had it?
Yeah, Johnny Depp definitely had it.
I mean, he's like very attractive.
I didn't realize it was him at first because he had all this makeup on. And then when I did clue in, I was like, holy shit. Like, I just thought it was this dude with this aura. And then I was like, oh shit, it's Johnny Depp.
Really? Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so we smoked DMT before we went to the show. And in my DMT trip,
what?
Yeah, I predicted his makeup.
How do you know you saw Johnny Depp then?
Well, because your DMT only lasts like 7 minutes, and then there's like no hangover. The only hangover afterwards.
Doesn't it feel like 7 years?
No, that's I think ayahuasca more. DMT feels like DMT was to me like the most interesting drug because you're 100%. At least when I did it, I didn't cross over, which is when you go to like meet your maker and you come back change. Yeah. I didn't do that. I went to what they call the waiting room, but I didn't know about any of this shit. Like I didn't research this stuff. I was just like, what is DMT, right? So I smoked the DMT. We met the coolest drug dealer ever in Australia. I smoked the DMT in the hotel room, and we're all in the bedroom, like all fucked up. And then like I smoked it off some weed. And then I go to this place where I'm in this room and there's all these elves working on this machine. They look like clowns to me, but I found out later on that when you go there, it's always elves of some sort. And they printed out this like geometric kind of pattern, right? Like this like black and white pattern, like very distinctive, right? And they're like working on this thing, printing it out. And then they're waving to me and it's not creepy or scary. And then they're working on a machine like in the movie Metropolis. And then I open my eyes and all the buildings are melting and then the trip is over. And we're like, and you just feel really fucking awesome. You're like, it was honestly like the least anxiety I think I've ever felt in that afterwards. And so it's really weird. So we go, and then I'm like, so what's happening tonight? And they're like, oh, the Foo Fighters are playing in town. And we're like, fuck, we know those guys. So we hit them up, and we're like, can we come to the show? And they're like, yeah, for sure. So we came to the show. Like everyone in Fucked Up leaves because they always would leave as soon as the Foo Fighters started playing type thing. And so I hung out. Just me and this Australian drug dealer and the Foo Fighters security guys, like, go back to the dressing room, say hi to the guys. And so I go back to the dressing room, and then sure enough, there's this guy on the couch rolling up joints with his face paint on. That's like the same as the fucking face paint from my trip. So I like look over, say hi to everyone, and then the guy with the face paint's like, "Do you want to smoke this joint with me?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I take the joint and I smoke it, and we're both smoking it, passing it back and forth. At this point, he's like, "My name's John," and I'm like, and at this point, I look, and I'm like, "Oh, I can see through the makeup basically," and it's Johnny Depp. You know, he's got a bunch of makeup on, but it's 1,000% Johnny Depp, and I don't want to ask him about being in these movies or anything. So I, of course, go to the one thing I know about, which is like, did you play in a punk band in Florida back in the day called the Fast Cars? Because I read in Spin magazine that he had played this show with his old band at some point called the Fast Cars. And he's like, no, man, we were called the Z Cars. And I'm like, oh, shit, do you like punk? He's like, Florida punk is my shit. So we just start going back and forth about bands, right? Like just throwing up band names. And then he's like, do you know this band, the Screaming Sneakers? And the day before in Melbourne, Australia, my friend Clint Chapman had given me this record that he got, which is like a brand new bootleg that just came out of the Screaming Sneakers 7. And she's like, here you go. Like, take this record, I got an original. So I had that in my backpack. So I'm like, yeah, you mean this band? And I pull up the 7-inch. And he starts tearing up. And it's like a total Rosebud moment. And he's like, that's my ex-girlfriend on the cover. I fucking loved her. Here's the singer. He's like, I loved her. And it's like this total weird Rosebud moment for him. And then he hugs me. And then we smoke more weed. And then we talk more about punk. And then his friend taps him on the shoulder and goes, John, we have to go back to set. And I thought his friend was his manager. Turns out his friend is actually... was Davey Havoc's. Davey Havoc knew his friend weirdly too. It's just like some random dude that hangs out with him. So it's all like this weird interconnected circle involving all these people I knew, and it all goes back to smoking DMT. You need to do drugs.
I want to meet Johnny Depp. Yeah.
You got to do DMT to meet Johnny Depp. Like it's like, hey kid, you want to meet Johnny Depp? Smoke this shit.
Well, my question about the DMT would be like, everyone talks about these elves, but how about the elves, man? They seem like they're so busy. Like, what's their life about?
They're in your brain. Like, apparently they're the elves that make your brain work. So we all got these elves in our head anyway, and they're working. They're happy working. They're like ants, I guess, and they just want to meet you.
Give them a day off or like a holiday.
Dude, that's what, when you smoke the DMT, that's what it is for them. They're chilling. They're waving to me like, hey, it's great to see you in here. Thanks for coming down. It's like the boss coming to visit the workers on the line, and then everyone goes back to work. I felt really, like, honestly, I didn't believe in any of this hippie bullshit. Any of it. And then I started smoking weed and it opened the door to it. But then, like, I smoked DMT and I hadn't read any of this stuff. I hadn't, like, studied it. And here I am, meeting Johnny Depp, giving him his Rosebud moment at the same time as, I'm smoking all this weed.
It is a pretty heavy moment. Now, were you able to, like, keep the friendship going with
No,
Johnny
we haven't
Depp?
talked since. No. I kind of think he had a rough patch after that, Like, I think meeting me was kind of like, he would be like, well, this was it. This was the apex. I'm in Australia. I'm meeting this kid, Damian. He showed me this fucking bootleg of a 7-inch.
He should have just hung out with you, man. He would not be in any...
We would just be buying records and smoking weed,
But I understand his life is a little crazier than yours and mine, on a minute by minute basis.
Yeah.
But when you're like smoking and some guy's talking about some band and your old girlfriend and all this stuff on you know what I mean? Like, when you go, hey, I should maybe keep in touch with this guy.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I should have given my number, but I think it's like at that point it's kind of presumptuous, it's like.
No, I'm talking from John Depp. I should know this guy.
Well, he might have been intimidated by me, Like, here I am coming in here.
True. He's
like, fuck, this dude knows so much shit. Like,
this guy's down with the foos.
Can't hang. He's with the foos. He's like, no, I don't know. I would have, but it would be like hitting on your server in a restaurant. Like, it's like just like I think like trying to give Johnny Depp your phone number. Like, dude, hit me up sometime. You ever want to talk about it 7 inches? Give me a call. And I'm the type of punisher that has done that to people, and rarely do they call you.
No, absolutely. I think what you did was the right thing. But for Johnny Depp, he should have been the one to go, listen, we got to stay in touch.
Well, he fucking regrets it now, I bet.
I'm sure he Yeah, you're the rosebud now.
Yeah.
You've become the rosebud.
One day we're gonna meet again, and it's gonna be the most epic podcast. Also, mutual friend of Melanie Kay told me a story about when they were shooting 21 Jump Street in Vancouver. She was there with DOA, and DOA were extras in the episode, and they invited Johnny Depp to see DOA play that night. He unfortunately politely declined, couldn't make it, but so I could ask him about that too. So I got two punk things to talk to him about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's probably right now going, I think his name was Davian?
Yeah,
Davian.
Davian.
What the hell? What was that guy's name? I gotta find that guy.
I'm telling you, the guys in Holy Fuck are probably getting messages from Johnny Depp right now. Like, I found you, Canadian man.
B Square. Holy fuck, that was it. From Canada.
From Canada. Got it.
Fuck.
Swear word. Oh, I knew it.
I thought your name was Davian. It's Brian.
Yeah, Brian. Oh, good.
B Squared.
No, we actually got confused for them one time. Fucked up.
By me.
By you?
Yeah. I was gonna go see you. Remember when we met?
Yeah. We told this.
Because holy fuck, we're playing the same day, I think. And I think I got the stages mixed up or something. It was.
We played super early that day. We were like the first band. There were a lot of Canadian bands playing that festival. Was it Lowlands? Holland Lowlands?
Yeah, in Holland, where this came out.
It all comes back to the Chiquita Banana.
Very.
Yeah, definitely that. No, we also one time a person came up and got very angry with us after a show in Halifax because we sounded nothing like our record. And then he was like, he's like, I'm just gonna go and tell people that Holy Fuck is just completely fucking different live. You guys should let people know. And we're like, what? Holy Fuck? We're like, fucked up. He's like, oh, my bad, and walked away. Brian told me though that one time the journalist came up to him. And he was like, I'm really sorry, guys. I prepared to interview this band and held a bunch of research about Fucked Up.
That's great. I've worked with half of Holy Fuck.
Really?
Yeah, we worked. Because it's, what's his face? Kevin, Brian. I've worked with
Graham.
Kevin and Brian.
Okay.
With Holy Fuck, yeah.
Brian used to live at the end of my street.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He now moved away. He lives in New York. No, he lives in Europe or something, maybe, or something.
I know he's not in Toronto.
Yeah, he moved. That's why I love this podcast, is because now we're going to weird places that I never thought we'd go.
Holy Fuck, ABBA, and Howard Stern and Johnny Depp.
Yeah, we got some good stories. You breathing Howard Stern's air. Being proximity to greatness.
I guess so. I was in the studio, so yeah, he had just left. Yes, that's true.
It's like as close to I breathe Beyonce's air. You could sell that air.
You kind of did. I mean, she shared the room with you, right?
She probably took legitimately one look in the room and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna chill with these motherfuckers." Like, no thanks.
Oh, there's no scented candles or draping here.
Yeah, peace. And there was also, to be fair, there was also an orchestra that was here in the room with us too. A string section. So there were a lot of us in that room that day. BBC's busy, It's the
BBC. Yeah, right. Holy cow! Yeah.
It was not a good performance for us, by the way, either. So Beyonce
was it, Jules
did not
Holland?
rub off. No, it was like BBC Radio.
Oh, okay.
I think it was for the indie rock show, but it might have been for that punk show that they also had for a while. It wasn't for they've got a rock show now that's kind of taking the place of the punk show. So it wasn't for that though.
We've never been on there. I've been on there once. That's it.
We were on one time on the punk show, and at the end they'd like, can you guys request some songs, like the usual stuff. And Jonah tried to get them to play the Business's cover of Crass's "Do They Owe Us a Living," and the guy's like, "I'm sorry, we can't play any oi on the show." It was like an American guy too. We were talking to him in California. It was very bizarre.
Wow.
He used to be hosted by an American guy, and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, just oi music, blah blah." And I'm like, not the business, and certainly not crass. So like, I think you might be misled on these assumptions with these
They're
bands.
thinking it's like some hard right wing kind of band or
I
something.
guess this guy was woefully ill informed about these two bands. Like, yeah, like I don't know, business is not that way, and crass certainly is not that way either. But you know, maybe he felt that Oi should have been only right wing, and that was his problem. No, I mean the other way. You want to play something like really sketchy? I'm down for that. Uh,
uh,
that was an awkward
well,
note to leave it on.
the BBC show that I was on was the Bruce Dickinson show.
Oh,
That
he had a show.
Yeah, he used to host this show. I still have the BBC tag.
Yeah.
So he ended up interviewing me. So he was the interviewer.
Whoa.
And then, but I used it as a chance to get him on my radio show. So after that interview was done, we switched seats and I interviewed him. So
Damn, that's a move.
yeah,
I did that with
yeah.
Jesse Brown, but it's kind of like a less of a caliber of star.
Jesse Brown and Bruce Dickinson. No, it's pretty good. I mean, if I meet Jesse Brown, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. I listen to Canada.
You're the Bruce Dickinson of Canadian media.
Canadian journalism. You're like,
Can you fence? Can you fly a plane?
so yeah, that was it. And Bruce was cool. Bruce was really nice to us. So that was really cool.
I smoked weed with his son when we were on Soundwave with them. That was the closest I got because his son's band, remember, was on tour with us. Too. I think you were on that Soundwave
cool.
that year with us. That was that year that we all did together in Australia with Iron Maiden
Yeah.
headlining.
No,
Oh,
it was Metallica.
Oh, okay, no, this was the
Slayer.
this was the other year that was Iron Maiden headlining,
Yeah.
and they had their plane, and the kid, we were smoking weed. He's like, "You want to come on the plane?" And I'm like, "That would
my
be
God.
amazing." But then our tours never linked. You know, our days never crossed again, and we were never on the same thing. So
Yeah, those were the best. Is they would people don't realize the Soundwave Festival would would cluster bands together. So we got clustered in with. We weren't with you guys,
no,
were we?
no, we were because you guys. I find they cluster you with who they think you sonically fit in with.
Well, we were with Madball and Sick of It All.
Oh wow, that's different. Okay, because like we were with like one year it was like H2O and Terror, and one year it was Polar Bear Club, and
Yeah, that was
you know
that was our year.
Yeah, okay, that was that year. That was that.
We were with Duff. It was Duff's band Loaded, Sick of It All, Madball, Visions of
Disorder.
Disorder, and another band. But I mean, my God, some of those bus rides to the festival from the hotel, the shuttles, it was just Madball took control of that bus, and everybody was laughing. I was crying. They were telling like Vinny Stigma stories. It was awesome.
Yeah, I thought that also Freddie was like the nicest dude on that tour. I ran into him a couple times on the street, and he was always just like, "Hey, how's it going? How's the tour been?"
They're all
like, wow,
really nice.
Super cool.
So, oh man, it was just like it was great. It was great, and but then we were partnered up with Loaded.
Oh yeah,
for the whole tour.
Yeah, that's because that's when I hung out with Duff. Was when
yeah.
Well, actually, that was the second time because the first time I just kicked open his dressing room door and just started punishing him about the fastbacks and the farts and the silly killers and et cetera, et cetera. And then we recorded that too. So check out Danko's podcast with Duff and me just punishing.
Luckily,
the shit
he's the nicest guy in rock and roll. So
he is pretty much. He's right there.
I think so. For like the stature of personality compared to like how cool he is, he's the coolest.
Yeah,
I've met anyone who's cooler than him.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, you know him better than I do, but I'm like, you know who I recently? Drea De Matteo from The Sopranos.
Yeah, you were telling me she was on the podcast, right?
Disarming. Like I was just like, damn, you are like way cooler than you should be. It's cool. Like Duff's the same way. When you meet someone and they're like way cooler, it's better than when it goes the other way. When you meet someone you think they're cool, and then years later they're like fucking Trumpers or something.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about anyone specific.
No. The first time I met Duff on that tour, like we'd met him before, but the first time I saw him, he
That was
came
the
up to
first time
me.
you met him?
No, we'd met him before.
Okay, okay.
Um, but the first time he came up to me on that tour, he goes, "I heard you're running for mayor. Are you running for mayor of Toronto?" And that was when Rob Ford was the mayor.
Yeah.
And I wrote this article about how I should be mayor, and this is what I do, right? And I had all these like crazy ideas. But it's cool that he kind of saw the headline and saw the article, so that was kind of cool.
It would
I
be
thought that was
amazing to see who you got as endorsements for your mayoral run. It would be like Bruce Dickinson, Duff, and then it would be some weird comics that have been on the podcast too. It would be like a
I get I get Gowan. Gowan is actually Larry Gowan. I want to get him on my podcast.
Gowan, the guy who smashes watermelons. No, that's Gallagher.
No, Gallagher, although very close. He sings in Styx.
Oh yeah, okay, definitely. Gowan also has Gowan solo records.
Yeah, and he was like a huge Canadian pop star in the 80s.
Yes, of course.
With Strange Animal and Criminal Mind. And we met each other 2 years ago at Sweden Rock, which is an amazing festival. And we played with Styx.
Wow.
Which is, it's awesome. And so, it was raining when we played. The day that we played, it was complete pouring rain. Great thing is, it didn't rain when the bands were playing. It was crazy. So in between our set and Styx's set, it's just pouring rain. Larry Gowan's in the van. You could tell the band's they're just hating this rain. I went up to him, I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm from Scarborough, man." And I started to name some people we both knew. And he kind of brightened up immediately. And he's like, "Oh, wow." And then right before they were going to go on stage, the sun came out. He came into our dressing room and he just chatted it up. And we talked about, Scarborough, and because I think he lives around the East End. And Don Mills, and where do you live, and where'd you grow up? And I grew up in Willowdale, and it was pretty wild. It was a lot of fun. So I kind of want to get him on the podcast. I don't know what that has to do with anyone.
Well, that's fine. I kind of similar story about meeting bands backstage. We played some show, and the Swans were playing. It was in Spain at Primavera Sound. And we were on the same stage, and so we're in our dressing room. We got a bunch of our friends there, we're all having fun, and then all of a sudden I look up and there's that dude Blixa from the group, Swans, and he's just
Blixa Bargeld
drinking all our beers and eating our food, and he's bringing his kids, he's bringing some other people from his group in, and they're eating our food. I'm like, yo, what's up, man? He's like, what's up? I'm like, you're in our dressing room. He's like, this is all our dressing room. I'm like, no, motherfucker, read the door. And he's like, well, I can take what I want. And I'm like, the fuck you can. And so we threw him out of our dressing room. And that was my meeting friends backstage story. I was just like, what the fuck? As someone in a band, you do that shit? You're lucky it wasn't Madball. If it was Madball and you tried to pull that shit, they would have stomped your ass back to New York, and then they would have shown up at your house in New York and beat you up again. It was no joke. It's
there's been people in bands who have done that to us. I don't know if I should out them like you outed Blixa.
Well, he's been outed on my podcast by several people as not being cool, and so it was, and I didn't even realize who it was till after the fact. I'm like, who the fuck was that dude? And someone's like, oh, that's Blixa. I'm like, oh, tell him to come back so I can kick him out again then, because you don't act that way.
No, you don't. I mean, I don't know if I should out the guy's name, but he was in our dressing room eating our candy, and we just thought it was so pathetically hilarious. We just let him eat it.
You can say my name. It's okay.
No. It was in Europe. Let's just put it that way. We were playing some festival, so that muddies the waters a bit, but it was funny.
I know, and I'm also one of those people that you come into our dressing room, if you're a fan who's got a backstage pass, and you're like, yo, can I get a beer? I'd be like, sure. Or if you did it accidentally, you're like, oh shit, I'm sorry, my bad. I'll be like, oh, that's totally fine. But the fact that it escalated and he tried to throw us out of our own dressing room, whew,
That's crazy.
whew.
That's nuts. I mean, I'm talking just candy. I mean, if I hate it when people come in and they just like eat our fruit and drink our drinks. It's like, hey, you live here, we're thousands of miles away from here. This could be our food, Like
Yeah.
people don't realize that either.
I
That's when I hate that.
That's why you got to power smoke, just to make everyone super uncomfortable. I got a friends band. I can't say who they are because they don't really talk about their consumption. But my God, they're backstage. Like, it's amazing seeing like music people show up because they have a dry backstage. They just have weed, and like so like record label people from the book, they just show up and they'd be like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, power smoking weed all around them. There's no
Yeah.
beers. They're like, see you guys later. Like, just leaving.
That's what I'd prefer too. I mean, it's great to meet people backstage, but I'm exhausted, and I'd like to say hi too, but not at the expense of our complete rider.
That's why I'm saying from the takeaway from today's episode is not this Howard Stern record, not that you get a banana record. It's that you need to start doing drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know me.
No, I know. You are my. We were going to form a straight edge band together, but then I went and sold out, and I believe Dallas Green sold out. So I believe now the straight edge band would just be you.
I'm still down, man. Zeke style.
Statement from the UK, the one man hardline band that quit hardline. But anyway, that's for another episode. This is fun. I love doing this show.
This is great. I mean, I didn't know we'd end up talking about ABBA and Johnny Depp.
No, that's what I think. Like, ultimately, we're bringing, two weird records each week, but where those weird records take us, that's the real magic.
Yeah, totally.
Oh
And I love the stories. I love hearing the stories. The Johnny Depp one is classic.
So I guess we should probably sign off now and say, oh, well, thank you. The Johnny Depp one is my best story. Like, I can't believe I haven't punished you with that before. Because I'm like, that's like, I tell people that like within normally 10 minutes of meeting them. Like, what do you do? Well, I met Johnny Depp once, and let me tell you the whole story. You ever smoke DMT?
That's pretty cool.
Dude, Bruce Dickinson's not interviewing me, so we're.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's a great story.
Drugs. Drugs always lead to an interesting story. It might not be a good story, and obviously weed I don't lump into this. I mean, but DMT specifically, it doesn't always lead to happiness, but it leads to adventure.
It does, I think, from what I've heard.
You can take my word for it. I guess we should sign off and say where people can find us, right?
Sure. Do you know the details of that at this time and place?
Well, I figure they're going to be watching this at a place, so they already know where they can find this. But I meant where they can find us outside of this weird, nightmarish world we've created for ourselves.
Right. So, okay, for me, Instagram is Danko_Jones. Twitter is @Danko Jones, one word. Facebook is one word, Danko Jones. I also have my Next Level Record Collecting Instagram.
An essential follow.
Thank you. Which a lot of these records have been posted. So maybe don't follow so you can, be surprised.
It's like previews. You don't know when they're going to come up,
Yeah.
Maybe people are going to start doing bets on it, like fantasy LPs with D&D, They're going to be like, oh, I think next week he's going to have this one. I know it because I saw it on the IG.
I was wondering, like, can I do, like, if it's one record from a collection or a series of records?
Yeah.
Which one do I pick? Can I do I pick one to to represent the series?
Well, I kind of I think I established that one on the first one when I did the Montrico one that, I showed all of them. So I figure you obviously
Okay.
have the same rules extended to you. Um,
Okay.
Maybe yeah, let's just do the whole series because might as well. There's so many records to get to. I know when you hit your Len picture disc that you've officially run out of records. So that's when that we're gonna have to figure out a new format.
That's going to be yours soon, I think. That's the trade, right?
That's the
Your
big
Oral
trade.
Roberts
Yeah, the Oral
for
Roberts.
my Len picture disc.
I don't feel bad stealing your sunshine, but I'm prepared to do it.
Oh, you're not stealing it. I'm giving you my sunshine.
That's true. That's true. Well, if you're looking for me and my sunshine, I'm on Turned Out a Punk on Instagram or Facebook. Those are run by my brother who produces the podcast Turned Out a Punk, which is on all the podcast platforms. And personally, I'm on social media at Left for Damian, and I also do this at the Punk Wrestling Connection thing, but I haven't updated that in forever. So, I got a lot of good more. I've got a lot of great other photos I should be posting on there, but I don't know how you find the time to maintain 2 Instagram accounts. That's wild.
I have 4.
4.
I have at Next Level Record Collecting. I have Danko_Jones. I have Next Level Book Club.
Oh yeah, Next Level Book Club. Yeah.
And I have memes of Danko or for Danko. I changed the name just because people make memes of me, so I post those.
Okay. I remember you also. Yeah. So you've had 4. Yeah. I don't know. I got my 1 and I'm having a hard time with it. But now that I'm in the basement, maybe I'll make time.
Oh, and I have 2 podcasts: the Danko Jones podcast and the Regal Beagle podcast, which you've been on many times on one of them and twice on the other one.
I'm part of the brigade.
The Black Coffee Brigade, along with Duff McKagan,
aforementioned,
Marty Friedman, Nick Flanagan,
Wade McNeil,
Jim Rhoda from Fireball Ministry, and Jim makes movies with Dave Grohl from the Foos, who had Johnny Depp in his dressing room, who you smoked DMT with.
No, I didn't smoke DMT with Johnny Depp.
You didn't?
No, I smoked the DMT in the hotel room, then went to the Foo Fighters show and met Johnny Depp.
How do you know it was Johnny Depp then? If you were because it lasts 7 minutes.
It lasts 7 minutes. Yeah, this brings us back to the beginning of the conversation. But also,
right.
and also, I did follow up the next day because I was in such disbelief that I did text, the Foo Fighter guys the next day and was like, "Yo, was Johnny Depp actually there last night?" And they're like, "Yeah, that was actually Johnny Depp."
Because listen, it's a Foo Fighters dressing room. Chances are.
Yeah. Another time in the Foo Fighters dressing room, I met the entire cast of Star Trek. Not the original 60s one, not even the Next Generation, but the movies. It was just I walked in, I'm like, holy shit, they're all here. All these people. And
It's amazing.
I tried to talk to one of them and he dicked me, big time. This was a good, I'm like, oh, wow. All right. You're lucky this isn't my dressing room or I'd blixa you out of this place, motherfucker.
That's how it is with Dave Grohl. That's his whole life is, the cast of Star Trek. When we recorded at his studio, I was like, by the end of it, I was like, I can't handle this because everything in the studio is a thing. A book, just hanging, just sitting on a table is not just a book. It's first pressing signed by the author.
Yeah.
Every little thing is a thing.
We went. They took us to a wine tasting. They didn't take us. They took me to a wine tasting one day, and it was just me, the Foo Fighters, and the Tenacious D guys because they were the other opening act on it. And they brought out all these fancy fucking wines, crazy expensive wines. And then we went to this. They brought the big grand finale wine, and it was this wine. They give it to us, and I'm like, this is amazing. I want to buy a bottle of this. And they're like, okay, well, this is actually really rare. This is the only one we have, and we're giving it to you to try it. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, it's $5,000 a bottle.
Wow.
One bottle of wine.
Wow.
I was like, okay, too rich for my blood. I was going to gift it to someone. I don't think I, like that's their life. That's fame.
Yeah.
That's like fame. Like that's like dead can alive dance living in a castle
Yeah.
somewhere. That's
Yeah.
that's that true money, that real money shit.
I mean, he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to like publicize that, but I'm sure he like bought a couple of bottles of that, put
We
it
went to
in the
the
back truck.
we went to the wine store afterwards, and like I was like, it was like executives from the tour, like fucking the guys from Tenacious T, and the Foo Fighters. So yeah, like everyone was spending money. There was a lot of money being dropped at that point. Like I think that's why they brought us in. Like it was one of those scams. Like, oh, come in, try the free $5,000 bottle of wine, and drop
Right.
$50,000 in the store behind us. Type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice that you were able to tag along to that.
I feel like that was the peak of my career. Like I woke up one day in New Zealand. We were opening for the Foo Fighters, and I'm like, this is it. This is really cool that I know this is it because it's not going to get any bigger than this. And it didn't. That was it. It's been a steady decline ever since. Yeah. I will say I ran into Dave another time. Every time I run into him, he's always like, he's like remembers me and comes up and talks. Like he's always like cool. And we go back to talking about some celebrities that aren't and some people in bands that aren't. And I got to say he's always been really nice every time I've run into that guy. And we established he probably lives in a fucking castle. Dead Can Dance lives in a castle, and Howard Stern lives in a castle. Better be believed Dave Grohl probably lives in a castle.
Howard Stern lives in a castle?
I think so. We established that, I think, at one point during this long podcast. He lives in like a castle in New York City.
Oh, yeah. Well, in that case, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Give us a follow.
Give us a follow.
All right. Let me see. How do I stop recording? How do I stop this?
Is there any way I can see the recording as well?
Oh, yeah.
Could you send